In the 1950s, God called a young man from Temple Baptist Church in Detroit, Michigan, to the northwest corner of Ohio to begin a new church work. While traveling through the little city of Findlay, Gene and Dorothy Milioni felt the call of God to stop and see how God could show his faithfulness by beginning a new church plant in this little blossoming city along the Blanchard River. In 1954, along North Main Street, Pastor Milioni and a small congregation of believers gathered for service.
And I first met him, I went to the church when they were on North Main Street, where now the building has been torn down, but it is now the parking lot for Salvation Army. And I first met him there, and I remember being in that service, and I stood there and cried the whole time he was preaching, because I knew I wasn't right with God. I was saved, but I wasn't right with God. And I remember, it seems to me that there were they may have been 15 people there, if that many. That's where I first started. My oldest son was just a little tyke, so that was in 1954.
God was faithful as Pastor Milioni and the people of this small church began to evangelize and invite the community to attend the services.
Little building. I actually took little kids out, and of course it was during the warm weather. I would take little kids out to my car, and we would have Sunday school in my car, and we did that a few times. And that's how small the place was.
So we visited the church, and I just remember that it was at somebody's house, and we didn't go every Sunday. But then, a few months later, they moved into a building at the corner of North Main Street and Walnut. And it was a really old building, and I recall that it smelled really musty, and that when you walked, the floors were creaking. And so I remember going there.
As the congregation grew, the need was apparent to find a space that would be a permanent location for ministry and growth. God was faithful in providing a place on Trenton Avenue. After purchasing the property, in 1957, a building project began.
Oh, we did everything. I led singing. Bert Spittler led singing.
Oh, yeah,
Remember
Bert
Bert? And that was on Trenton Avenue, and we built that building. I remember climbing up and on the top of that and banging nails into boards on that building.
Pastor Milioni, experiencing the faithfulness of God, dedicated much of his time to personal evangelism, knocking on doors and inviting the people of Findlay to know Jesus and come to church.
He was a definite soul winner. He made calls all the time, visited all the time. I almost kind of thought of him as like a father figure.
And I remember one occasion when we was there, and Pastor Milioni came to visit, and I just told my wife, "Here comes that pastor again." Pastor Milioni was very persistent, come by very often. And I promised him I would come. And there was a revival that was going on in there, and I think it was in the springtime, that I went to. And I know I've been through a struggle in my life with different things, so I felt God called me and pulled me forward, and I got saved.
But we had preachers that Pastor Milioni knew, and they'd come and we'd have great revivals, revival services and special services.
As the ministry grew, the Sunday school, children's, and bus ministry began to flourish.
So we had 3 buses going in church ministry, and bus ministry. And it's always wonderful to get to bring the kids in. We brought them in, they was no matter what, you know. They barefooted sometimes, but that was wonderful.
Had a great time. We had a great time with our bus kids. They were awesome. We bribed them a little bit with candy. When they got off the bus at home, they would get candy if they sang the songs and were well behaved. on the way to church and back home. And they were the greatest kids. They really kept our spirits up.
It became apparent, however, that as God began to grow the ministry, there was also a growing need in the church.
We would look around, and there was mostly just women and children coming to church. We really needed men, but it was mostly women. And so Dorothy and myself and Myrtle and some of us got together, and we decided, hey, we're going to meet early on Sunday evening before the services, 15, 20 minutes early. And we're going to go back in this back room and we're going to pray for God to send men into our church. We did that. Guess what? God answered our prayers. Mm-hmm. And men started coming to the church. And when I'm out here in this service, sometimes I can't help but to look around at all of the men and their wives. I think, oh my goodness, how different is it now?
By the 1970s, the church had built additional space for classes and discipleship, but they had outgrown the space on Trenton Avenue and began looking for a new space where the ministry could continue to flourish.
We had pretty well outgrown the other church, so we had to do something. We tried an annex at the old church for the Sunday school classes, find another lot for parking, and empty lots for parking there that the church had. But we still just felt like the Lord was leading us to expand, and so we came out here.
Far outside of the then known city limits sat a large farming space on County Road 236, which became available for purchase to the public.
He made the comment, Pastor Milione did, that, well, that's a little far out. And anyhow, we had a revival meeting not too long after that. And still looking for property. And Pastor Milione brought the evangelist out here and showed him this. And it was told to me that the evangelist said to him, man, what are you waiting for? That's a great piece of property. And that kind of swayed Mr. Milione, and he got to thinking more and more about it. And first thing I knew, he was telling us, the congregation, about it. And we decided we'll buy it.
In 1969, the land on County Road 236 was purchased. Where many saw empty space, the people of Trinity saw a place for God to show his faithfulness once again.
I can remember when it got on the process of doing so. We came out to the lot, a bunch of us church members had a big bonfire right out here and prayed and sang songs and prayed for the further gospel church outreach for the community. And it's just the fact that we're out here, but how are we going to, reach them and draw them out here? But it worked. It worked out fine. God's was in it,
The building project began, and a uniquely structured building was erected.
When this building was very, very near completion, and Pastor Milione was so excited. And he came in here one day and was standing on the pulpit, and he thought he was all alone. And he got on the pulpit, and I guess he must have pretended that there was a congregation out there. And he was preaching, and there was a fellow working way up here in the top, And when he realized that fellow was up there, he was a little embarrassed. But, that fellow heard the gospel. Who knows, he may have gotten saved. But that was a funny thing. We laughed about that and teased the pastor about that.
God showed his faithfulness through the process, and the ministry grew as Pastor Milione continued to lead the people of Trinity Baptist Church in the ever-changing decades of the 80s and 90s, and into another edition on campus of a family center dedicated for outreach and ministry. After the onset of the new millennium, and 5 decades of God's faithfulness. Pastor Milione retired in 2003, and the church called Pastor David and Vicki Schaefer to lead. The people of Trinity continued to focus outward, looking to the mission fields around the globe as they focused on continuing to build a global ministry of preaching the gospel and planting churches.
During Pastor Schaefer's years here, we were continuing to grow. We saw new families come in, and which is always exciting when you can do that, when you have young children especially. And he was missions minded, and we had some awesome missions conferences. I remember in the auditorium they used to hang flags. We had brackets all around the auditorium. We'd have a flag for, there probably was 30, 40 flags of different countries. And it was neat to walk in the auditorium and see all the color combinations of the flags.
He really liked was being involved with the missions, and that's great. I really think that's a great thing, and I wasn't able to go on any of the mission trips, but I think he wanted to be really involved in that and get other people involved in that too if they can. And
the ministry continued to grow, and the people of Trinity Baptist Church experienced the faithfulness of God as they shared the ministry of making disciples.
he was out to get people involved, and get them out of their comfort zones. And I think he was good at that, and trying to get people involved and then not realizing that you can do that.
Jeannie, I'm calling you because Sandra Ragland isn't able to do the meals and do the cooking in the kitchen anymore, and somebody gave me your name. And I was wondering if you would be interested in taking over those duties. I was so excited because I hadn't been serving in the church at that time. And so I accepted. And I remember when I hung up the phone after talking to him, I remember going, yes!
With the continuing need to expand as the ministry grew, an educational wing expansion project was begun to add additional space for youth, children, and fellowships.
It was exciting because I worked in the youth at that time, and we knew that we just wanted to expand and to have a new room for the youth. That was awesome.
The church was growing and there was a need there. And that, of course, the church wants to focus on children. That's our future church. So there was a need for that, for more classrooms, and then a teen room. And that made such a big difference. And I do remember that Pastor Schaefer was the one that really implemented that. And so that was a valuable contribution that he made, as well as many others.
While the ministry was hard work, the people of Trinity also grew closer to each other and grew together as a community and family.
And the thing that I love about this church too is the people. Great people. Friendly, fun to be with, and I just love it here.
In 2010, the church called their youth pastor, Mike Spann, who had faithfully been serving in the church since the early 2000s. In this new decade, the church had a strong focus on community engagement, making purposeful gospel connections throughout Findlay.
And always out doing parades and being at the Hot Air Balloon Fest. And he was very much for any type of activity that we did off the grounds.
While engaging the community, the church continued to make impacts in the lives of anyone they came in contact with.
At the time, Mike Spann was here. And so I was able to talk to him quite a bit. And he just made me feel like welcome. At the time, I wasn't going to a church or anything like that time in my life. And he just kind of sat down. We had a small conversation. Didn't push anything on me or anything like that. And he asked me if I would be willing to come to church.
As God showed his faithfulness, the church had amazing opportunities to make huge impacts in their Findlay community.
And he was sitting there and he was counting on his fingers, and I'm like, well, what are you doing? And he said, I spoke to 1,700 people today. I don't know when I'll ever get a chance to do that again. So that was a really exciting day to see him out front and representing our church, because there was a very big crowd at the fairgrounds for that sunrise service. So he was always let's get out and go out with the people.
Though ministry to the community took point, the people of Trinity Baptist Church and the leadership never forgot that ministry was always about people.
They were Catholic, and he talked to them, and he led them both to the Lord. And not only did he do that, but he followed up and went over and he talked with them quite a few different times. And even though they were old and didn't have a car, he couldn't drive because he's half blind, they were still interested in their souls, and he would spend time teaching him and letting him know how God loves him and that he's saved and he's going to heaven. And I think that really touched my heart, that he would have that much concern, even though they're never going to be coming to church here.
In 2020, the church called their fourth senior pastor, Benjamin Jennings, at the height of the COVID epidemic. As the world changed, the faithfulness of God remained, and God's church continues to move fearlessly forward.
I'm really excited about the fact that we have a lot of young couples coming with children. Family growth is awesome, and it's important for a church.
And then I feel like discipleship class. I'm involved in discipleship class, and it's amazing. I think that discipleship has made a world of a difference in the church. I think it's made a world of a difference in all of our lives.
It forced me to really get into it, and now I understand it a lot more. Going through that was just one of the greatest things that I could have went through here.
Because I wanted to become rooted, I guess. Now that I've went through the discipleship program and things like that, that's what I've needed, somebody to just kind of guide me and give me that direction.
To watch these people come in, these new people come in, and to watch the Lord work in their lives and watch them get saved and move on to the next step and the next step, that's exciting to see the growth in them. And so right along with my growth, I like watching the new people come in and just seeing the growth that they have. It just gets me excited.
Trinity equips new people with what they need to do to grow in Christ. You don't just come in and say, hello, how are you? My name is so-and-so. They help them, they equip them, they help them to grow on to the next step, just like we talk about next steps. So I think it's amazing that Trinity just offers that.
At the heart of the ministry still remains the spirit that birthed it, to win souls to Jesus and to make disciples. And Trinity Baptist Church is still making a difference in the lives of people today.
Like Beth said, I'm also excited to be baptized and become a full member of the church. Excited to see the church grow and with more new members.
What I really like best about this church is that you don't sugarcoat it. You are a gospel-based church. I don't think I want to go to a church where a pastor tells me, oh, just do what feels right for you. No, I want a pastor to tell you, you're a sinner. I'm a sinner. Jesus died for our sin.
The evangelism, the outreach, that is something that it continues on with Pastor Ben. And he is definitely sowing those seeds to discipleship and reaching out. So that is something that is really probably the biggest influence for me that the church has had.
And in the lives of those in the church too, we talk about sending people out. Who's next in the church? Who's going to be sent? Who's going to be the next missionaries? Missionaries are so important. And, with that in mind, it always makes you think, who's next, every time you look and you think of that. So I'm excited. I really think that we've got missionaries that are going to be coming out of the church soon.
At Trinity Baptist Church, we have an incredible history and a godly heritage. God has been so faithful to us, and for that we must be grateful. Most importantly, we've been given a very serious stewardship. We've been handed the gospel. We've been given the Great Commission. We've been sent to Findlay, and we've been sent to the nations. We're not dismissed. We're sent.
Keep up the good work. Keep going.